And I'm going to jump in with an important point. We all know how great the Federal Reserve and other economists are at forecasting. So we should totally believe their projections of what it would have been. Totally.
Yeah. Even projecting the past for them can be tough sometimes.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
What it is, player?
Time to get going, man.
Oh, time for some
you.
action. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that excitement. I like your enthusiastic, patriotic gear you're also wearing right now. Oh my goodness, USA.
No, I worked really hard for this. This is a throwback USA basketball new era cap. You don't know these. You can't just pick one of these things up, dude.
What's the new era?
New Era Hat Company.
Oh, okay. I thought you were separating the modern times from the ancient times.
No, and then low profile, pre-bent bill. It's a tough find. Just yeah.
Oh, wow. I love everything you're talking about right now. It's riveting is the word that comes to mind.
Can we talk about the team? Did you see the final versus France? I know we're a week late on this.
Yes, I absolutely did. And did you have? I don't want to steal any thunder that you might have. What do you think?
Well, thank you for not stealing the thunder because I have thoughts. Steph Curry hit basically the last four shots. I mean, Durant had a couple, a shot in there. But what's amazing is on his fourth three-pointer, LeBron James wide open, like no one within 50 feet of the guy. He's standing over there with his hands up, like just ready to lose his mind until the shot goes in. And then he starts doing Curry's night celebration. I thoroughly
was that the double team? Was that the double team?
Yeah, the double team. Yep.
This is the moment for me. Not because of the LeBron piece, though that is awesome. It is because there are these moments where in that moment, France, they're down by 5, I think, at that time. They'd come back a little bit. They were down by 5, and you could tell that they went, okay, we can do this. Absolute confidence. They probably had 169% confidence that they could fully come back and win that. And then that moment, it all went away. Like because when you see Steph Curry, and this is true of many of the greats, when you see them and you know that there's nothing you can do to stop it, it's like you're done. You're done. Wemby retired.
He's done. He's like, I'm 20 years old, but if I have to pay, I mean, that was it. I can't claim Steph became the alpha dog, and that's impressive with that group of characters. And on that last shot, the double team, he passes to Durant at the top of the key, who can easily pass to LeBron, who might be the generation's best player. And Durant just throws it back to Curry and says, "Go for it, dude," because they've played together. Like he knew what was happening. He knew it was going to. It's amazing.
You can see it in the soul.
Enjoy the performance, so I'm happy to support. What you got for us on the investing side?
Federal Reserve papers are the essence of my soul, as you know.
That's true. Yeah.
And what a soul it is. Like, can you imagine that soul? Anyway, there's this paper, this letter is what they call it, from the Federal Reserve of San Francisco. The title is Pandemic Era Liquid Wealth is Running Dry. Title basically says it all. I'm still going to say more. As y'all know, at the high level, in the aggregate, because of all the influx of funds that came folks' way, combined with them being on the lockdown, in 2020 began this accumulation across all income groups of excess liquid wealth. What the Fed has done here is they modeled out, I said across all income groups. What they did is they did across all income groups, and they also show the top 20%, bottom 80%. They said that's where the separation really comes into play when you look at some of the patterns. What they modeled out was if the pandemic hadn't happened, according to historical data, this is what they would have expected for quote unquote liquid wealth to accumulate. Liquid wealth they're defining as cash equivalents, effectively. So anything that you could turn into money that could be spent. That's what they're defining. So money market funds.
And I'm going to jump in with an important point. We all know how great the Federal Reserve and other economists are forecasting. So we should totally believe their projections of what it would have been. Totally.
Yeah. Even projecting the past for them can be tough sometimes.
I agree.
So all kinds of salt, all kinds of grains, all kinds of salt in here. So what they're showing is when you take from 2020 to the 2021, 2022, depending upon income group, what happened is you do get this surge of liquid wealth. People have got money coming out the Zazzies. And where that 20%, 80% separation comes into play is for those in the top 20% of income, it goes up even more in comparison to what it would have been. Then what happens is starting in 2021 for the lower income and 2022 for the higher income, a dippity-doo-dah begins. So at that point in time, you see the folks that have more money start putting more money than usual into money markets, specifically money markets, because interest rates are up. And then you see debt start to accumulate on both sides. That's what you see happen. So now when they fast forward all the way to now, for all groups, it's below where you would expect their liquid wealth to have been if there were never any pandemic. So basically, we accumulated all this, what this says, we accumulated all this money. We got all haphazard with it and then spent more than we would have spent otherwise, which is a large, when you think about this from a GDP perspective, it's a large artificial injection into the system, is what they're saying, which is why you get things like inflation. As much as we want to blame whomever for it, like it's just like math is the way that this would happen.
Yeah. Too many dollars chasing too few goods. Like simple.
Exactly.
This is, I wish these graphs are amazing. And this is an incredibly interesting topic. I wish I could fully believe, like, I have a hard time saying that the projection is right, as I just joked about. But let's run with it for a second. That hypothesis is fascinating, right? We could give people all this money and they can actually end up worse off than they would have been if we didn't give them any money.
Yes.
It's a fascinating take. And it's fairly believable too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We talk about this side of human psychology all the time. Because if you get more, you might hop on that hedonic treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I'm in a different mindset, a different place. So, okay, let me start spending more than I thought I would have otherwise. And with the worst, going to your worst point, less liquid assets and the debt. So when they now look at delinquency rates, which we've discussed here too, delinquency rates are up. And for that bottom, it's not because of the way that credit card, according to this, because of the way that credit card agencies submit their data, they couldn't quite do the top 20 and the bottom 80 as they did otherwise. But if they say the bottom households, I don't know how they separate it out, delinquency rates there are approaching 3%. Whereas for the top income households, it's more like 1% delinquent. So those that were worse off generally are worse off than they would have been otherwise. And their debt is worse off too. So that's where we're sitting. What this leads to, this doesn't even try and say, and we're not saying here, but it is kind of a fascinating psychological take.
Well, and you've been talking about consumer credit delinquencies and concerns for maybe 3 years now. The credit card delinquency data I've seen, not necessarily in this, but in other places, has definitely ticked up. If we ever end up being right about that, and we never really made a prediction, but it feels like that's still headed our way. And we just have been talking about it for 3 years. I'm so interested to see what happens if, like, kind of the other shoe drops there, because we've been talking. So what was it, 10 months ago when the excess savings from the pandemic actually ran out?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either. And I think the folks that right now are like, we're in a recession, we've been in a recession, and I heard someone call it the CP lie, because like I'm like, I don't know why we have to go that far into it. I'm not trying to claim we're in a recession right now. The point is just that debt levels are up, delinquency rates are rising, and people are out of money. There are groups of people, I should say, that out of money. That's the state that we're in right now. America could turn around at any moment. Like, you never know what's going to happen. It's just there are a lot of points pointing in a direction that we should be careful as a country. That's all.
Yeah.
So I'm also quite curious as to what things will look like in 12, 24, 36 months.
I'm quite curious about um, what the professional investors are buying.
Oh, that was quite a little fishbowl switch, mon frere. Let's
Yes.
13F it up.
I normally don't enjoy this. I don't know what happened this week. I think the confirmation bias of I have a few of these holdings. I saw all the 13Fs come in, which is the regulatory filing for basically if you run an investment fund that's of decent size, you're required to put this out. So everyone from Buffett to Aikman to Bill Miller puts out a 13F. And I just want to talk through some of the highlights and some of the fun stuff I'm seeing. And then you can tell me to be quiet when I tell you all the people that bought Nike. All right. Will you do that for me as a
I will
friend?
tell you, I'll tell you to be quiet right now.
So, how about you start us off actually? Do you, were there things that popped up?
Yeah. So here's the way I look at these. I look for one of two things to catch a glimmer in my eye. The first thing I look for is, are there places of what I'll call material concentration? So meaning at least double digits, but probably more like approaching 20+% of someone's portfolio is in a given asset. Because then for me, that's a bet. Whether or not it's a new bet or not, it's just like that's a bet of sorts that they're taking. I find that to be interesting. The other thing I look for is, are there commonalities across 13Fs of what folks are selling or buying kind of in mass, or just in one portfolio, something that seems kind of fascinating in a purchase that is of material concentration. So the things I look for. So I pulled out a few that fall into that category. I'm going to save my best for last.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to tell a personal story.
Okay.
We
Oh, please
talked
do.
about we talked about Buffett adding to his cash pile last week, and he sold half of Apple basically. What he bought, Doogles, is Alta.
Yes, he
Uh,
did.
and just last week, before this information came live, I was doing Alta, and I was about to go in deep dive phase because it was cheap, and I was like, "There's a lot to like here." And I
Yep.
read this sentence from an analyst that said that the bear case is that they compete with Sephora, who has a strong foothold in Kohl's. And I literally went, anyone that's afraid of Kohl's is not a good investment. And I
That
stopped my research and I
that is
did not
a
buy the thing.
that's getting straight to the fundamentals, is what you did there.
And it's hilarious because if I wasn't wounded from my Kohl's experience, I probably would have owned the thing now. I would have got the huge Buffett purchase jump. I maybe even would have sold and moved on. Um, it's hilarious. That sentence, I had no chance of buying the stock just from that sentence.
I do love that. We have a little bit of a connection here too. I got a text from someone after it came out that Buffett bought this that says, and I quote, "Let the record show Warren bought Ulta Beauty about 4 months after I told you to buy it." There was a lot of ignoring of Ulta Beauty that was happening on the Skippy and Doogles podcast.
Yeah, it was cheap. It was totally cheap. I do the same. This for your 13F review. Like I'm
Yeah.
basically looking at large holdings and what they bought, and then I just had fun this week diving into a few things. So I did not buy this. I would not buy this, but Bill Aikman's top holding is Hilton Worldwide. That's a hotel group. Have you ever looked at that stock? Because it's pretty fascinating.
I only looked at it last week for the purposes of seeing whether Warren Buffett should buy the whole thing, but I didn't actually analyze the stock. I was just looking at the value of it.
I was just looking this week. Basically, their hotels often sign like a 20 to 30-year agreement with Hilton to brand themselves as one of the Hilton properties.
Oh,
And
oh,
to get out of that agreement is very difficult and costly for the person that runs and owns the property. So it's like this weird stream of revenue that's pretty sticky. And then they have 7,700 hotels worldwide. Marriott is the biggest brand with 8,000 something, but it's getting pretty similar. I see why Aikman bought it. Now there's a ton of debt. Like there's things I don't like about it, but I never even realized that the business model kind of works like that. And it's almost this weird agreement where they get rental stream payments in a way to use their branding, and then their network of people that have the credit cards and the gold members. I don't know why I can't think of the name of that. Basically, the Hilton Honors members
Okay.
is
Yep.
more loyal than they might be the most loyal in the industry. So even though Hilton only owns like maybe 6% of all the hotel rooms worldwide, it's greater than that in the US, and they have an incredibly loyal and proud following within their membership group. It's a very fascinating one that I could see people making a lot of money. Also, the performance has been pretty incredible. I personally just think it's on the wrong side of the cycle, that it's a little overpriced, but at some point that could be interesting.
He's also his next two holdings. If you just put them together, you can throw them under the bucket of fast casual or just straight up fast food. He's got Chipotle and then QSR, so like quick service restaurants, what QSR stand for, international. So those together, like another 30% of his portfolio. So there's a lot of hospitality, fast casual is what the bet has been on that side of the aisle.
Now, the reason I looked at his 13F, or the reason it was kind of the first one that jumped out at me, is because he purchased, say it with me now, Doogles, Nike.
Nikkei. Oh, okay.
Lots of people purchased Nike this week, or released filings that they purchased Nike this week. I'm feeling really good about it.
That is true. The reason this didn't spike for me is because it's not a big part of his portfolio. It's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, because even a small part of his portfolio is a lot of money. But it didn't, I don't know. I was like, it's like a cute buy. I'm not trying to get into the cute buy business.
Yeah. Hilton and Chipotle were a cute buy at some point. Anyway,
Oh,
you know, like,
I see what you're doing. No,
you slowly add to these positions. He bought $230 million worth. Like that's all right. It's a little more than what I bought. It's all right.
About 1 million times how much you bought. So another one that stood out to me, Bruce Berkowitz, Fairholme Capital, which I know nothing about. So if you do, great.
Yeah, I know Bruce. I mean,
85% of this $1.4 billion portfolio is St. Joe Company. JOE.
Oh, have you looked at this one?
Yes. And I was like, what? I had to close my browser when I was researching this one. Tell me. Whatever you know, tell me.
Cult following with the folks that really love Buffett and the forums, the true deep value guys. There are a bunch of people that love Joe. Refresh my memory because it's probably been a year that I looked at it, but they own real estate on the Florida Panhandle effectively, and the pitch, Doogles, is basically something along the lines of that real estate is drastically undervalued because of it's either the accounting treatment or some other thing. Anyway, people that love this thing, and I know a lot of portfolios that will look something like this. I've like kicked it around once or twice. It's never crystal clear to me that there's massive value there.
So you're right. It is Panhandle, Northwest Florida. That's where the property's owned. I could not understand this. I could not understand it. It felt like, from a value perspective, it's like such a speculative value that the company is not kicking out anything of interest, it seems like right now. So you really best be believing. I won't be deceiving. My land is what they are saying over there. I did not get it. So cult following.
No, I actually think I do think there's probably something there. Every time I've looked at it, I just haven't had time to like fully go deep under the covers and find it. But for me, that's the perfect example of like Buffett's fat pitch analogy. Like, I'm glad other people like it and have strong conviction in it, and that's great. The story doesn't get me excited, and so I'm just gonna let that one go by.
Yep. Please do.
Lilu's portfolio.
This one's fascinating. Yes.
Just buy some Berkshire. Like, so his portfolio is Bank of America, which Buffett owns, Google, which Buffett does not own. So it's Berkshire plus Google.
It's not just Google. It is 39% of his portfolio is Google.
Yeah, I know. But then he owns Berkshire and Apple and Occidental. Like, it's just buy Berkshire, dude.
Yes. He basically, so it's 14% of his portfolio is Berkshire. And then he went, but Berkshire doesn't have quite enough Bank of America. So then 28% of the portfolio is Bank of America, but Berkshire doesn't have quite enough Apple. Like it's a weird like buy Berkshire and then make additional bets on top of what Buffett has in Berkshire. Plus, to your point, 39% Google.
I thought maybe, and I really like Lilu. So I'm throwing shade only for the joke here. I thought maybe he wanted to go on vacation or something. It's like I don't have as much time to research stocks as I wanted. Let's grab a few names. Like I like Google, and let's grab a few names. Let's make my investors feel like I'm doing something for them. But I know Buffett did the research already, so I'll just be on the beach.
Yeah.
It's a hilarious portfolio.
It is pretty funny. I like that one. All right. This is a Soussan confirmation bias one here. Alta Rock Partners. Number one holding is TransDigm Group. 28% of the portfolio is TransDigm. I just commend that level of research and brilliance. That's all.
What percent of your portfolio is TransDigm at the moment?
I don't know, like 1%, something like that.
There we go. There we go.
But at one point,
I will say
it was more.
Yeah, I will say generally, there's a lot of meta in these portfolios. Generally,
A lot of
there
meta.
seems to be a lot of Amazon, a lot of Google. We kind of mentioned those. So, like Carl Icahn's portfolio, his new buys, and you would say these are small Doogles, but his new buys are Caesar Entertainment and Centurii Holdings, which I've never heard of actually. But this cracks me up. His top holding is obviously Icahn Enterprises. Like that's a whole. I just laughed at
Yeah,
that.
that's it. Yeah. My number one holding is Skippy and Doogles Talk Investing equity stake. But come on now.
Hey, when we go public, it's happening.
That's right. That's
okay.
right.
Michael Burry is always fun to talk about, regardless of his right. He nailed the Big Short. He can do whatever he wants ever since. I'm not even sure how his performance has been since. But speaking of a name you see in a lot of these, his top holding is Baba.
That's right.
So I've been beating the drum for Baba for maybe 2 years now. Love to see it. So he added to that. That's 21% of his portfolio. He also holds a fair amount of JD, which I hold. That's my bet for the Chinese stock market, basically to diversify away from Baba, but has a similar investment. So I love to see that. The one that's most interesting on him that I spent a little time researching is Hudson Pacific Properties. I bet you've never heard of this stock.
No.
It's real estate. Here's all I will say. Tangible book value is like at 0.25 at the moment. This is a fascinating one to research. There are lots of warts on this thing. It's not a slam dunk, but this is one where long-term call options, if you wanted to do that, could be super interesting, because I think if the right thing happens with interest rates, this stock could explode. It also could go to zero or go bankrupt. But that one, I was like digging into as to why he made the purchase, and I found it fascinating. The ticker is HPP. Not for the faint of heart, but really, there's something there, I feel like.
Still on the real estate train, Einhorn, number one holding, Green Brick Partners, GRBK is the ticker. It's almost 30% of Einhorn's portfolio. It's a land development organization. That's another one in the real estate. It's near all-time highs right now, so not currently depressed. But just when I see someone like that have such a concentration, it raises my eyebrows a little bit. So I loosely started looking at that one. It's just that it's not in the world that I really know or understand, similar to the last couple. So, probably not for me.
I've been watching that one for a while. So Einhard's 13F is always the Screenlight Capital. If you don't know, it's always one of my favorites because there's just weird stuff. His top buy this quarter is Peloton, dude. And I was just
like what?
I was just like, I can't do it. No, I've looked. It's so cheap that, I mean, I've kind of looked, but I just have no desire to own the thing. Like I cannot. But Green Brick is an interesting one. His entry price is around $57 a share. I'd be much more interested there as opposed to its current price, which is I think in the 70s. His second holding though is super interesting. It's Console Energy Doogles, and I researched this one 6-9 months back. It actually looks like the price is still reasonable. That looks like a very interesting position. I'm actually surprised to see it went down a little in value. I may have to dive into that, do some more research there. The investor presentations are pretty fascinating for that one.
Speaking of getting in at very cheap prices, CAS Investment Partners, number one holding, 65% of their portfolio, Carvana. Carvana was one of those, what was it, a year ago, 18 months ago, that was in a position of, we are bankrupt. Like for all intents and purposes, we are currently bankrupt. The stock was down to, I don't know, like $3. It was something super low. Now it's at 155. I don't know how long they've held it because I haven't checked the old 13Fs, but that was one of those in the Peloton. You reminded me of this because of the Peloton thing, where it's basically like, could be just a flyer. Again, I don't know when they bought this or how long they've held it.
Carvana, when it was at $3 a share, I did some high level research on it, and I could not get comfortable that the thing wasn't going bankrupt. Then, if memory serves, they announced they were restructuring some debt, and they kind of kick things down the road. But what's so interesting, I don't know much about CAS Investment Partners. Their reported price to pick up Carvana was not $3 a share. It was 128.
Oh, was it? Okay. I didn't look to see when they bought it. Okay,
they're riding the train here recently, which I could not get comfortable with.
Now that's weird.
I couldn't really get comfortable with it at $3 a share. So that made me discount the whole 13F. Like they don't invest like I invest.
I mean, 65. Hold on. You're telling me 65% of their portfolio they put into Carvana like now, basically. And it's a $1.3 billion portfolio. That is it's $800 million in Carvana. Well, I hope they're fixing something. I hope this is a rigged system.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a good short-term play there, but you and I aren't investing for the short. Like,
no,
I just said that one's not for me.
No, thank you, Bite. My one more that's my favorite. This is from our boy Howard Marks, Oak Tree Capital. We were just talking about the UK last week or week before. Basically, like, nobody's into the UK. Number one holding, 33% of the portfolio, Torm PLC, TRMD. This is one I'm going to take an even deeper look at. I only did the cursory review, and I was like, there's something interesting in this puppy. And the UK is an interesting place just because it's so beaten down, as we discussed before. I saw some things that were worth looking at in here. I haven't gone to really read any of their filings, so I don't know enough about this organization. But the cursory look was quite fascinating to me.
Yes, that I missed that one. I can't wait to dive in. You know why I missed it? Because I was so busy seeing that he owns JD, just like me, and he owns this may rock my world. He owns Kilroy Realty Group, which is corporate real estate in basically the West Coast. I've owned it before. Yes. It is so beaten down and cheap, and I just didn't love owning it. Like it was one of those that was painful to own because you know that more pain is coming before the profits come. But gosh, if Howard can get comfortable with that, I need to take another look.
Yeah, I'm going to take a deeper look here. Always research recommendations, people, not investment advice. This one is I'm taking my own research recommendation and I'm going deep into this one because the high level plus Howard got me interesante.
Yeah, I mean, not even close to investment advice. This is we've joked about this before, but someone like Bill Miller, who at one time just owned Amazon and Bitcoin in his fund, it was like, yeah, but if Bill Miller loses his shirt on those investments, it doesn't even matter for him. He's got another, tens of millions, hundreds of millions sitting around that it doesn't really matter. He is not you. We are not you. The stuff we buy or anyone else buys does not naturally mean you should buy it. That's not how this game works.
All right. Can I transition? Or you still got 13 Fs though? All right. I'm reaching the fishbowl. and talk about this chart I came across. The title of it is Fewer Funds in Recent Vintages Have DPI. None of those words might mean anything to you, but they might. But I'll explain here for a second. So there was a report that came out about private equity and the state of private equity performance right now. So this chart is pulled from that. What DPI is, it's the amount of distributions that private equity firms give to their investors. So just think about that as a liquidity event of some sort. A company gets bought, a company goes public, the investors then are able to get some of that money back. That's what DPI is. And so what this is looking at is cohorts from 2017 to 2022. And what have those cohorts, what percentage of those cohorts have provided any distribution? So it doesn't matter what the size is, doesn't matter if it was a positive return or a negative return, it's just any distribution. And what it's showing overall is that more recent funds, this will not surprise you, by the way, but it's interesting to look at the numbers. More recent funds have lower amounts of distribution given how long they've been around. So I'll give you an example. If you look at, let's go back to 2019 and you draw a line down and say, okay, at 5 years from the inception of that fund, what percent of funds that started in 2017, 2018, or 2019 have given any distribution? 5 years after 2017, 59% had given. So if you take 2022, and go back 5 years, 2017, 59% have distributed some capital. For those funds that were incepted back in 2019, so now 5 years is today, it's 39%. So 60% of them have nothing has happened. Now, what I found to be interesting, you look at that and I think you can be like, yeah, so you had 2020, 2021, like it's not that surprising at the high level. What I found to be interesting is in the comments that folks had about this, there were some folks that were like, look, investors have to invest like more intelligently and stop with throwing your money away. / the founders of the companies during this period should have performed better. That was like one camp of folks that it's the fault of the companies. Then there was another camp of folks that were going after regulators. And they were effectively like, when you shut down IPO markets, which we know have happened recently, and you have regulators that are not allowing acquisitions to take place, what do you think is going to happen? So fire the regulators. And it was interesting to see those two camps as to why these numbers are the way they are.
Well, and that's kind of, not exactly, but kind of the Bill Gurley position around it should be easier to IPO, less costly to IPO. The annual cost once you IPO to stay public and keep up to date with all the compliance is high. And that being public is a really positive thing for a lot of companies that might be in these funds, that might be owned by funds like this, and they kind of have nowhere to go at the moment, it seems.
I think that's right. And I'll give one more stat. It's a hard chart to talk through. You know, sometimes charts are difficult. So if you go to funds 3 years after inception, 2017 to 2020, so those funds that were 2017 funds in 2020, so 3 years later, 25% of them had some distribution. If you go to 2021 to today, so that 3 years of 2021 to 2024, it's 9%. It's such a contrast.
Yeah. The graph here is really good. I mean, although you have to look at it for like 15 minutes to fully get all aspects of it. Takes a while to digest. The other argument happening in the comments and around this is some people saying it could be a really good thing. It could be investing more in those companies with a longer term perspective, and that when they send distributions back, they might be massive distributions. So it might be really low for the first 5-7 years, and then by year 10 it looks great. We just don't know. It does seem like there's a pretty consistent trend that's not great.
That is right. You're right there, because the comparison assumes that, let's take that 5 years from 2017 to 2022, that number is good. Like you're assuming 59% is good, and so therefore less is bad, where maybe that's too much short-term thinking, too much opulent thinking, and too much greed. And so 39% is better. Yeah, you're right. Only time will tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that does not mean, I don't think the report, which is from Carta, specifically says like this is best in class performance or anything. I think it's more let's let's compare to historical data.
Yeah.
This is what was easy to pull. On the 13F, I missed one thing. George Soros bought some Baba too. I told you you're gonna have to tell me to stand down on that. There's a tweet I want to read for you.
Oh, please do.
You're gonna really like this. From ARK's inception point, which is Halloween of 2014, through
Okay, first of all, that should have been the clue.
Yeah, who starts their fund on Halloween? Through the end of January of 2024, which is its most recent semi-annual report, the fund has collected approximately 362 million in fees cumulative. Over that period, the fund has lost 7.5 billion cumulative. As an accompanying chart, this is truly hat tip performance. Wow.
How is this allowed?
This is the Margin Call movie where the head of the company is like, we are selling to willing buyers at a public price. I forget the exact quote. People are buying the thing.
Yeah, so here's the deal though. I get that. I respect it. You see the marketing, you buy into the investment theses, it's risky. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, if a doctor keeps botching surgeries, they take away the doctor's license. At what point?
Unfortunately, none of that happens in finance and investing. There's no fraud going on here. Well, you're going to argue that, huh?
How is there not? I see very little difference. I'm going to be a little hyperbolic here. I see very little difference between her saying our research shows insert any ticker that we're buying in that I might just sell tomorrow is going to quadruple in value versus Theranos. And there's this one drop of blood that's going to be able to give you all sorts of tests, but it actually really can't.
We should actually get someone on the show, like with the Fed or a regulatory body, and talk about that line of what's fraud and what's not. Her stuff, and I'm not even trying to pick on her. It's been a fun joke on the show because she's easy to talk about, and the performance has been spectacularly good at times and spectacularly bad at others, right? But this, we bought Tesla. Here's our research case that says it's going to be worth $100,000 a share. I don't know what the exact numbers is, but they're insane. They're always like 1,000 times what it is today in a way that you could not actually achieve. Like, it's just not happening. And that does border along. It's so disingenuous. It can feel like a lie is the way I'm going to say it. That's kind of what you're saying too, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The difference in the fraud case, the difference I imagine is that someone knows, like absolutely knows that what they're saying is not real. And this is just, is there something called like negligent fraud where like the likelihood that the thing you're saying is so low that there's just got to be something here. And I'm not actually trying to pick on ARK specifically, but anything that falls into this category, the amount of money that has been made by that firm versus the amount that they've lost for the people who put money, and it's just so egregious that even if you go, okay, that wasn't fraud, that's fine, but like take the license away. You are no longer allowed to market to people. Because I skipped so many letters in that word. O''SLY. Honestly, it's false.
Still really flirting with that probation over there. All right, we're gonna do a quiz. Okay. No Googling for you.
All right.
Tesla's current stock price is $216 per share.
Okay.
Kathy Wood's target for 2029 for the Tesla stock is $1,000. True. $4,000. True or false? You think it's 4,000?
False. I think it's above 1,000.
2,600.
There you go.
Okay, so only a 10x. Only 10x in 5 years. Right? Okay. True or false? Kathy Wood's Bitcoin target for 2030 is $2 million per coin.
I believe that. Something like that.
False. $3.8 million per coin. This proves your entire point. Like, how do you take this stuff seriously?
I don't know. I just read this book, Anansi's Gold. Have you heard about this?
No.
It's about this dude in Ghana who makes up this story about having been left the he calls it the Oman Ghana Trust Fund, and he's been left by the previous ruler of Ghana all the gold of Ghana, basically. He's like, he smuggled it outside the country. I know where it is. He told me, as the only person that knows where all this gold is, I've got the money in banks in Europe, the US, and it's increasing in value. So, like, invest in me. And then when I'm able to unlock these funds, riches, not only for you, but also for Ghana. Like, I'm going to improve the lives of Ghanaians. And you can get it was like 10x return in 10 weeks, right? Kind of
Wait, this is
situation.
a true story, or this is
True
like
story. True
Aesop in the
story.
house?
True story.
Okay.
This dude ran this fraud for decades, like with people. But this is where, like, because people, he's like, in weeks, I'll get it to you. And then it's been years. And they're like, well, so where is it? He's like, oh, next week, I'm going to be able to
Yep.
unlock the dollars.
Yep.
How long people are able to run with this, because it's so blinding. When something's that ridiculous, because what the people, according to the book, what people said that stuck around for so long was they were like, the story is so ridiculous that no human could make it up. Like, there has to be reality to it. And when you think about the loss aversion that comes from not holding that Bitcoin till it hits $4 million per coin, no, I want to be a part of that ride.
All right. That's a fascinating connection. Like, if you're someone who maybe doesn't know a bunch about investing, and you figure out that Kathy Wood's a superstar, and all of a sudden you read one of her research papers, which seems really put together, and it says Bitcoin's going to $4 million per coin, and you're like, gosh, the thing's only at 60,000 now. Like, let's pick up a few coins. It could warp your mindset in a way. Is this what happened to Michael Saylor? Is this really what...
I mean, you saw his eyes, his glitter eyes. The other thing it probably gets you through, now I'm just going off the deep end, but the other thing it probably gets you through is, let's say someone is like killer investor. And so what they're not even promising, but what they're showing you the track record is that they're going to bring 14, 15% a year. So they're beating the market overall by like 5% a year. Let's just say, like, that's the scenario. And along that journey, you're going to hit 30, 40% drawdown sometimes. So occasionally the entire portfolio is going to go down 30, 40%. But I'm going to bring you on average 15%. And you look at that, like, the scariness that happens when something's down a third or 40% is so wild. Like, it hits the human psyche. And if you're saying, I'm going to take that 40% drop to try and get 15%, no. But if I'm going to take a 30% drop to try and get 40x, okay, yeah. I mean, like, that 30% is nothing when 40x is what we're like trying to get after.
It's true. It's very true. And this, like, so the Jason Zweig article on, where he doesn't name ARK specifically, but where he talks about the dynamics of the portfolio owning a bunch of really small market cap stocks, and then more money flooding those into ARK, and then ARK having to maintain the ratio of their investments, which meant they were almost chasing their own tail with the purchase price, and therefore it would drive up performance, and then there'd be no one willing to sell that stock because it's so small, so they'd have to bid up against themselves. Like, that to me is probably the key to this entire irrational story that's now like 7 years in. Oh, it's actually 10 years in. It's incredible. And I think it shows how parts of the market are still fundamentally broken, despite the fact that we think we're super sophisticated in the year 2024. I did not expect to talk about any of this detail. I find it fascinating, though. I always appreciate your insights. You've now ruined my afternoon. I just want to let you know, because that Howard Marks stock looks pretty dang interesting.
Looks juicy. Like,
I'm like, what is going on here? But why is Howard giving me free money? That's my 5-minute reaction.
Yeah, I got to go do some reading. You're welcome.
So good. Anything else in your fishbowl?
Not at the moment.
Okay. You sent me a a picture this week. It's a T-shirt. It says, "I survived the market crash of August 5th, 2024." I love that. Having a really hard time not buying it. And for those who have forgotten by now, you don't even remember what happened on that date because it was so meaningless. Good stuff. Well, so we were talking my quantitative portfolio only because I have multiple investment accounts with different tax types, ends up rebalancing twice a year. There's a few names we'll mention for premium listeners next week if you're interested in that. And if you want to hear debates like that, which is more of the banter and nonsense that we talked about today, you can go to skippydoogles.supercast.com and grab a premium subscription to support the show. Let's see. Anything else, Doogles?
That's it. I enjoy talking the specifics with you today. It's fun to get into the stocks. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. See you guys.